Good evening and welcome. I am Amarachi Ubani. Tonight, Senate President receives ministerial list from presidency as Nigeria turns 55 tomorrow. House of Representatives mandates Speaker Yakubu Dogara to meet with President Buhari over trial of Senate President Dr. Bukola Saraki. Boko Haram changes tactics as it resorts to poisoning water sources in Borno villages. And Russia launches airstrikes on ISIS targets in Syria.
On Business News tonight, the Central Bank of Nigeria plans to review the current interest rate regime for economic stimulation.
And on Sports News tonight, Confederation of African Football slams Nigeria Football Federation with a $5,000 fine for fans' misconduct in the 2017 AFCON qualifier against Chad.
We begin tonight with the Senate President, Dr. Bukola Saraki, confirming he has received the ministerial list from the President. On his Twitter handle hours ago, Dr. Saraki said he received the list from the Chief of Staff to the President, Mr. Abba Kyari, and the Special Advisor to the President on National Assembly, Senator Ita Enang. The Senate President, who had earlier on his Twitter handle said he was yet to receive the list, as at 4 p.m. wrote, "I can now confirm that I just received the list of ministerial nominees." The President, Muhammadu Buhari, had earlier in the month promised to submit the list to the Senate. The Senate might not be screening the nominees earlier than next Tuesday, as it adjourned today to enable members observe the Independence holiday tomorrow. Meanwhile, the chairman, Senate Ad Hoc Committee on Media and Publicity, Dino Melaya, spoke with Channels Television on the receipt.
I can authoritatively tell you that the list is in the custody of the Senate and with the Senate President in particular. The President of the Senate can only read those lists or the letter and content of the communication from Mr. President on the floor of the Senate. It cannot be discussed or revealed or its content exposed before Tuesday. And I assure Nigerians that nothing will be shrouded in secrecy. The screening will be done in the open, and it will be conducted with the fear of God and transparency.
A news agency, Reuters, is reporting that the President will hold Nigeria's oil portfolio in his new cabinet. In an interview on the sidelines of the annual meeting of world leaders at the United Nations General Assembly in New York, President Buhari said that he intends to become the Minister of Petroleum Resources. The President, as a Minister of State, will oversee day-to-day issues of the petroleum sector. President Buhari has held this position before. He was head of the Petroleum Trust Fund under General Sani Abacha in the 1990s and was oil minister in the 1970s under President Olusegun Obasanjo. Meanwhile, the President has returned to the country following his 5-day visit to New York for the 70th session of the UN General Assembly. During the visit, the President canvassed the United Front for the war against Boko Haram and discussed issues on climate change. He met with the Presidents of the United States, China, and the UN Secretary-General, Mr. Ban Ki-moon. He also will be making a nationwide broadcast as part of activities to mark Nigeria's independence tomorrow. We'll have more on that later. Meanwhile, the House of Representatives has mandated the Speaker, Yakubu Dogara, to meet with President Muhammadu Buhari to find a political solution to the challenges being faced by Senate President Bukola Saraki. This prayer came as an amendment to a motion of urgent public importance on Nigeria's 55th independence anniversary. The amendment was adopted and the motion immediately passed. Our correspondent, Larry Lasisi, reports.
I rise to second the motion.
It came as a motion of urgent public importance, a motion to celebrate Nigeria as a country marks its 55th independence anniversary. The mover of the motion said Nigeria has a lot to celebrate.
Accepted, Mr. Speaker, that as a country, we have faced a lot of challenges. The challenge of insecurity, of unemployment, of inadequate social services and infrastructure. But in all this, Mr. Speaker, we don't have to despair. we have to be strong and encourage ourselves, knowing that we don't have any other country but this country.
One after the other, members rose to speak on the motion.
And yet I wonder if really we should celebrate. Because I think we'll only be able to celebrate if and when our fellow sisters and brothers in times of difficulty are once again back in their respective homes, living peacefully with one another. I think a Nigeria that will bring everybody together. I think a Nigeria that is growing stronger by the day. I think a Nigeria where all of us will look at the Nigerian flag again with pride, where all of us will invoke in ourselves the absolute beauty of this country. The things that divide us are infinitesimal to the things that hold us together.
One key contribution was by the minority leader of the House.
We must stand together to build our democratic institutions, and respect for this institution can never in any way be negated. Based on this, Mr. Speaker, I am now therefore proposing an amendment. In line with the amendment that you, Mr. Speaker, take a position, address this particular issue, come back to us and find out how we can find a political solution to what is happening to the chairman of the National Assembly.
He sought an amendment asking that the Speaker meet with President Muhammadu Buhari to come up with a political solution. This amendment was immediately put to a vote. The motion was then passed. The House has also urged all institutions of government to be guided by the rule of law and due process. These agencies have also been encouraged to avoid being used to undermine any arm of government. Lanre Lasese, Channels Television News.
President Muhammadu Buhari is expected to make a nationwide broadcast tomorrow at about 7 a.m. The president's speech may look at issues fixing the power sector, revamping Nigeria's oil refineries, and the delay in submitting the ministerial list. The Independence Day broadcast may also review his visits to the United States and Nigeria's performance at the 70th United Nations General Assembly. The war against insurgency is also expected to become a major part of the president's broadcast, as he has given the armed forces a deadline of December to defeat Boko Haram. Joining me now to discuss the president's decision to keep the oil ministry to himself, as well as the ministerial list and his visit to New York, is Mr. Yinka Olujimi, a legal practitioner and a journalist. You're welcome to the News at 10.
Thank you.
Now, that list is out. We haven't seen it, so we don't know the details of it. But what kind of people do you think made that list?
I would not want to speculate as to the people who make the list. I would rather speak when the list is out. I can also speak on the kinds of people I expect to find on that list.
So tell us the kinds of people you expect to find on the list.
Since the return to democracy in 1999, certain faces have been recurring decimals. I would not love to see such names and faces. I won't want to mention them. But certain persons who have been part of Nigeria up to where we are today, because we are in an era of change, we would love to see different things. We would love to see a blend of the political class and the technocrats. We would love to see something different. We would love to have a ginger in our lives once again.
We understand the president will be keeping the Ministry of Petroleum to himself, and then he will have a junior minister who handle the day-to-day running of the ministry. Can this work in this present situation Nigeria is in now?
Once again, I have no problem with that. One, the Constitution does not state that there must be a Minister for Petroleum Affairs. The Constitution only says that the president can head his activities with the appointment of ministers. In that wise, whether he appoints a minister, or a substantive minister, or a minister of state for the petroleum ministry is neither here nor there. What I would love us to also talk about, far more importantly really, is that can we have a way of changing the discourse? Can we have a way of not allowing politicians to lead us into the kinds of arguments that they need to do about things that we need to do in Nigeria? For instance,
okay, go on. How do you
for instance, for me, the decision by the president to keep the portfolio of the petroleum ministry to himself betrays this same fixation on oil as the source of running our government. And that will never ever, it has not led us anywhere, it will not lead us anywhere. What do they do in other parts of the world? How are they running their economies? How are they running their systems? We have other countries that have crude oil. Crude oil, I've said at several fora, it's not a gift from our forefathers to us. It's actually something we hold in trust for our children. It is not something that we exhaust, we spend, we sell, we take the money and spend for our own personal purposes. No. We need to run Nigeria on different paradigms. We need to run Nigeria on different levels. What are we doing, for instance? I would love to hear from the president what he plans to do concerning a national insurance scheme. For instance, we have ASU going on strike, NASU going on strike. Everybody, we say that Nigeria does not feature.
Are these issues you'd like the president to address in his message to Nigerians tomorrow as Nigeria
Definitely, those are the issues I'm waiting for. Those are the issues Nigerians will begin to ask our politicians, not just the president, but even those who are in the offices of governor and the National Assembly. Those are the issues that are important to our lives, not oil, not exhausting whatever resources we get from oil. Oil is a diminishing resource.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Yinka Olujimi, for joining us on the News at 10.
Thank you.
I've been speaking with Mr. Yinka Olujimi, a legal practitioner and a journalist, on the current issues in Nigeria, the ministerial list, as well as the president declaring that he will be heading the Ministry of Petroleum Resources. We'll have that broadcast at 7 a.m. tomorrow, so do stay with Channels Television. We will be broadcasting live the president's address to the nation. And in part 2 after the break, Nigerian Army says hope is not lost in the search for Chibok girls. Also, it says winning the war against Boko Haram is on course. Also, we'll take a wrap-up of today's proceedings at the UN General Assembly. The VOA's Margaret Bashir will be joining us. Please stay with us.